Universidade de Massachusetts, novembro de 1998. Editores, fãs de quadrinhos, estudantes e professores universitários se reúnem para as comemorações pelos 20 anos da criação da novela gráfica.
At long last, the top of the hill where people who are beginning to take what I'm doing seriously. This is something that's been coming a long time. As a matter of fact, I'm really overwhelmed by that introduction of Contract with God. I think I'm going to go back and read it again.
Para compreender a trajetória profissional de Will Eisner e sua luta para que o quadrinho fosse reconhecido como uma forma de expressão artística, a profissão cartunista volta no tempo até a dura década de 30. Os Estados Unidos viviam a Grande Depressão Econômica provocada pela quebra da Bolsa de Valores em 1929. Filho de imigrantes judeus radicados em Nova York, o menino Will vendia jornais para ajudar no orçamento familiar. Nos jornais, Will descobriu os quadrinhos. Foi amor à primeira tira.
In those days, there were something like 10 newspapers in New York City. Each one of them carried comic strips. And since I was interested in drawing, and I liked to write, and I was a very avid reader, those all together showed me that this was a medium that would be of interest to me. Well, in those days there was Crazy Cat by Harriman, who was a very strong influence on me. A cigar began with Popeye, a very strong influence. There is a skill and a science, if you will, to being influenced or learning, and that is you must look at a man's work and decide what it is he is doing that you want to learn from or how to do it. For example, I learned how to do water, how to draw water from Prince Valiant, the strip Prince Valiant. I learned how to manage dialogue from Milton Caniff and Terry and the Pirates.
O pai de Will, que era pintor de cenários no Teatro Yiddish nova-iorquino, sempre foi um grande incentivador. As idas de Will ao teatro acompanhando seu pai exerceram uma influência fundamental.
I don't hesitate to point out that Yiddish literature, Yiddish folklore remains very much inside of me, and I think in these terms. A Contract with God was written in a Yiddish story rhythm. It's almost like the sing-song of a Yiddish storytelling.
And I think that there are people who grew up in the Depression like Will, who will always be much more moved by stories about the Depression because they were there. And as much as I and my contemporaries may be moved by them, it's in the same way I'm moved by a story about the Crusades or the Revolutionary War. So I think to the degree that Will has a universal message, it gets across. There's no age limit to what he's doing. There's no gender limit. There's no race limit. I mean, Will speaks to, I think, a universal audience.
Além de talentoso ilustrador, Eisner foi, desde jovem, um ávido leitor que pretendia escrever contos à maneira de seus ídolos, Guy de Maupassant, O. Henry e Chekhov.
For me, comics was a true literary form, and it was my dream to spend my entire life in this medium. All my other colleagues who were starting with me thought of comics as a vehicle or a stepping stone toward what they felt was a higher art form, which is painting and fine arts and so forth. And the dream essentially was that I would reach a point where this medium would achieve the status of literature and that I would someday be regarded as a writer, as I like to think of myself as a writer who writes with pictures.
Now, Eisner is a masterful artist. We have no finer artist in the United States than Will Eisner, nor do we have a better storyteller. Now, if, let's say, this is hard to think about, but suppose Will Eisner couldn't draw, an incredible idea. I truly believe he would have continued his interest in narrative and storytelling, and he would have written short stories and novels, and he would be standing there besides Faulkner and Hemingway as one of our major creative forces.
Acima de tudo, Will Eisner é um artista em constante evolução, que nunca se acomodou.
Une des grandes réussites de son œuvre, c'est d'être restée vivante et d'être toujours en train de se recréer, de se réinventer. Et j'ai toujours autant de plaisir à voir son travail que j'en avais il y a 20 ans. Et ça, c'est quand même le plus beau compliment qu'on puisse faire à un auteur.
If your work today does not look as good as the work you did yesterday, you're in serious trouble.
No início dos anos 70, o sonho de Will parecia longe de se concretizar. Tendo criado um dos mais célebres personagens dos quadrinhos, o Spirit, Eisner tinha se afastado da prancheta e concentrado seus esforços na American Visuals, produzindo material educacional e de treinamento. Tudo iria mudar quando Eisner entrou em contato com uma nova geração de artistas. A força dos quadrinhos underground desperta em Will o sonho dos quadrinhos como arte.
And I was astonished. It suddenly rang a bell in my head that these men are the new generation. This is a new revolution that's going on, because they were using comics to deal with social problems. They were protesting with comics. And they were using comics as, in my opinion, a true literary form.
The fact that Will has a career that has a watershed moment where he just decided, hey, I'm going for broke. I'm going to do this all again and reinvent it one more time, that's really swell.
A big company came along and offered to buy my shares of the company. And so within about a month, I was walking around with a lot of money in my pocket and at liberty. And my wife said to me, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll buy another publishing company. She said, why do you want to do that? You're always talking about finding new ground. She said, why don't you go back? She said, you can afford to do it now. I said, okay. And so I sat down and I realized that we're at the beginning of a revolution. So I wrote Contract with God, which was aimed at an adult audience.
One can talk about the precursors of the graphic novel, and there are a few claimants who can say they were telling stories with pictures earlier, but until 1978, when Will Eisner came along with Contract with God, there's really nothing else to compare. A lot of top professionals, ranging from Frank Miller to Art Spiegelman, will readily admit that this had an impact on them, and I think clearly the comic book industry has never been the same since. Suddenly, we had a work which was thick, it had a spine, you could put it on a shelf like a real book. It was still a comic, but it was a book.
Pela primeira vez na sua já longa carreira, Will estava sem editor. Em suas mãos, uma história que desafiava as fronteiras do meio de expressão. O termo mais usado em inglês para quadrinhos, comics, era totalmente inapropriado, dada a natureza nada cômica da obra.
So I called the president of the largest publishing company in New York, whom I knew my work. And I called him and I said, look, Oscar, I have a very novel thing here, a very unusual thing here. It is a subject matter of a very serious subject matter. And he said, what is it called? What is it? So I looked down at the thing. I couldn't say to him it's a comic. So I said, it's a graphic novel. Oh, he said, that sounds very unusual. I've never heard of that before. Bring it up. So I did have a meeting with him. And when he looked at it, he said to me, oh, it's still a comic. You still have balloons. I finally had to publish it with a very small publisher.
Embora o livro tenha causado uma enorme repercussão no mundo dos quadrinhos, A ousada proposta de Eisner demorou a encontrar o seu público.
The reader that I was writing to was not the reader that went into the comic book store.
In fact, as I understand it, the first store in New York that Will walked into to find his book had put it in the religion section. And this was his first clue, and a clue to many of the rest of us, that this was going to cause problems with booksellers.
Now, Contract with God, by the way, continues to sell. It's still now, 20 years later, it's still in print.
A partir de Contrato com Deus, Eisner começa a inserir elementos pessoais em sua narrativa. Isso acrescentava às histórias uma dramaticidade ainda maior.
I didn't know, for example, when I first read Contract with God, when Fremy Hirsch, the character, is walking in the rain and he has just buried his daughter, that Will had had a daughter who had died as a teenager. After I found that out and I reread that story, it brought tears to my eyes because I felt the pain, and the rain in the story to me was tears, torrents of tears. He chose to do something that was semi-autobiographical, that spoke from the heart, that spoke about something as serious as the death of a child and making a contract with God, superintendent molesting a child. These were subjects, even in underground comics, nobody was doing anything quite like this. It was very moving, and the format was exciting.
It was a collection of short stories around a theme. One of them specifically, The Super, I think. That story had a kind of dramatic structure that was bringing something new into the equation for me of what was possible in comics. It was kind of interesting to see.
Contrato com Deus chega ao Brasil e é recebido como um inesperado presente, até pelos mais antigos fãs.
A primeira novela, a graphic novel dele, O Contrato com Deus, primeiro eu levei um susto e fiquei agradavelmente surpreso, né? Era uma nova maneira de ler, ver o Will Eisner. E realmente, a partir dali, eu notei que nascia um novo escritor. E era cumulativo, era um Eisner em cima do outro.
Ele evoluiu, em geral, uma maturidade de um artista que é com 40 anos, ele chegou com 60, 70 anos, quando ninguém esperava mais nada dele.
Ele resolveu fazer um romance todinho ilustrado. Seria como uma pequena novela de Turgenev, por exemplo, mas feita em histórias em quadrinhos.
A Kitchen Sink Press começa a republicar as histórias do herói mascarado de Eisner no Spirit Magazine. Will aproveita para completar as revistas com uma nova obra serializada, Life on Another Planet, ou O Sinal do Espaço.
Roku, I did it! Like you told me, I'm gonna be a big man, right? Oh!
A busca da vida em outros planetas se transforma em uma trama de espionagem, guerra fria, corrida espacial, interesses econômicos escusos, seitas apocalípticas e terríveis experiências genéticas. Mas afinal, o que é uma novela gráfica? Em que ela é diferente de uma história em quadrinhos comum?
It's a book-length work that combines words and pictures to tell a serious story, not necessarily humorless, but serious for adult readers.
It's like the difference maybe between a short story and a novel in fiction. In the short story, you compress a lot of things, and it can be a very interesting thing, but you can't talk about the larger sweep of history, the larger human emotions.
What it has done is it's broken the limits on pages. It's broken the limit on the size, the color. It allowed professionals to throw away all the old rules, and it's never been the same since.
A arte de Will Eisner, livro escrito por Cat Ironwood e publicado em 1982, consolida seu status como inovador dos quadrinhos. Mas quem poderia imaginar o quanto ainda viria pela frente?
Certainly in terms of impact, I'd say Contract with God was the most profound in opening my eyes, but I think my personal favorite is probably Life Force.
A Life Force, publicada primeiramente em capítulos no Will Eisner Quarterly, era uma demonstração de vitalidade de Eisner. A história começa com Jacó, entre a vida e a morte.
Ei. Dona Barata, pra que se esforça? Pra talvez ficar viva mais alguns dias? Bem, pra falar a verdade, também eu tento sobreviver. Você que é barata só quer viver. Pra você é o que basta. Mas eu tenho que perguntar, por quê? Por quê? Quem sabe por quê? Deus?
This medium is a literary form, and its quality will depend on the kind of subject matter I attempt to discuss. I began to explore the idea of dealing with subjects that normally had not been dealt with in the past.
A força vital de Eisner encontra redenção no trabalho, como no caso dos sócios Jacó e Ângelo e sua madeireira. O livro influenciou muitos artistas, como Robert Crumb. Num cartão enviado ao editor Dennis Kitchen, o guru do Village Voice afirma que o livro é uma obra-prima que lhe deu alento para continuar a trabalhar e completa.
Um grande trabalho. Um dos melhores quadrinhos que li em muito tempo. Um tipo de obra-prima.
Os quadrinhos, no entanto, ainda lutam por um lugar entre os meios de expressão artística considerados válidos.
I'm not quite sure we've arrived at the point where the Academy and many critics have accepted either the comic book, the graphic novel, or comic strips as an art form. But there are a lot of signs that we're making genuine progress. Museum exhibitions, many books being studied, published, and written about the comics as an art form.
O prêmio Pulitzer concedido a Art Spiegelman em 1992 pelo seu trabalho em Maus foi um sinal de que o status dos quadrinhos pode vir a conhecer dias melhores.
There's a wall to a castle, a citadel, and we're all trying to climb up that citadel. Spiegelman made it, and I'm waiting for him to throw the rope back so we can come up.
For there to be a future for comics, it's necessary to find that serious audience that might be out there reading words without pictures, going to serious films when they come along. And yet, there's a kind of danger only in that comics' strongest energies probably come from their transgressive qualities, from their outsider status, from their graffiti roots. And that kind of edginess is part of what I treasure about comics. And the danger of talking about comics as a serious art form, comics for adults, is that it lose that and attain a kind of domesticated respectability.
Nascido e criado em Nova York, Will resistiu muito à mudança para a Flórida. A distância da metrópole ampliou ainda mais a importância da Big Apple no trabalho de Will.
The move to Florida was completely my idea. We needed lots more sunshine, lots more physical exercise, and more opportunities to live in a climate and atmosphere that would take a lot of the physical stress out of living.
Moving from New York to Florida was very hard for me to do at the time. I didn't really want to come down here. New York is still inside me. For 8 years, I commuted from Florida to New York to teach. I used to say that I went to New York to get a carbon monoxide fix. I have a good visual recall. The way some people have a good numerical recall and remember numbers, I remember images very clearly. And so very often, most of my books, the backgrounds are done from memory. I did a story about the man's moving to Florida in it was called Sunset in Sunshine City. And the story opens with this man about to leave the city to move to Florida to retire. And he passes a lamppost, and he remembers the lamppost, some things that happened around the lamppost, and the fire hydrants and so forth and so on. These are the memories that I feel are built within the city area, and this is what I tell my stories about. For me, cities are a big drama, a big theater, and there's a never-ending supply of stories.
Em 1986, Will lança The Dreamer, sobre os primórdios da indústria de quadrinhos e seus pioneiros.
It seems like every time there's a new book, Will asks what we might do that's a little different. And sometimes he wants to reduce the book like The Dreamer. Sometimes he wants it larger. And I think this is simply another example of someone who is always trying to get the reader's attention.
Em New York, the Big City, ou Nova York, a grande cidade, Will reúne uma série de vinhetas sobre o cotidiano das metrópoles. Nova York é a personagem principal.
Ele trouxe a sofisticação do teatro, porque é uma das referências dele. O pai dele era cenógrafo também, era pintor e cenógrafo. Ele trouxe a sofisticação do cinema expressionista alemão, ele costuma dizer isso. Os filmes expressionistas foram importantes para ele. E, bom, ele trouxe Nova York.
Postes, bueiros, caixas de correio, hidrantes. Todos esses sentinelas urbanos são incorporados na mitologia pessoal do autor. Will produz um livro com o ritmo da cidade. Ele conta as histórias de Nova York por meio da arquitetura da cidade. A cidade é que sustenta os personagens.
I enjoy humor that laughs at oneself, that is self-deprecating. When you develop a perspective or lift yourself above the scene itself, then you begin to think of things in a more humorous fashion because you were able to compare all the elements around.
O Edifício conta a história de 4 fantasmas com suas existências pós-mortem ligadas a um prédio na Avenida Dropsy, endereço emblemático nas histórias de Will.
My stories are all about city living. When you live in the city, you are very much a part of the buildings and the structures within the city. So for me, buildings take on character. They have a kind of a psychic quality.
Eu guardo com muito carinho na minha prateleira a história O Edifício. Tem uma coisa de arquitetura que eu acho muito legal, tem planos que só um grande desenhista pode observar. É uma história muito bem construída, tem muita delicadeza no roteiro, tem muita sensibilidade no roteiro.
So buildings to me have a character. I did a book called The Building, which deals with the disappearance or the demolition of a building. And I always ask myself, how can that be that they took this building down and there was nothing left?
Monroe Mente tenta sem sucesso salvar crianças de acidentes fatais, enquanto a bela Gilda Green mantém um romance proibido com o poeta Benny. A música de Antônio Tonati, capaz de incutir força nos fracos de espírito, e a obsessão do magnata imobiliário P.J. Hammond pelo prédio completam a trama.
Blá, 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 blá. And I believe there's a psychic debris that is left when a building goes down.
Às vezes até é um pouco difícil escolher alguma coisa, mas eu acho que O Edifício, pela síntese que tem, né, de contar a história de um prédio, eu sou fixado em arquitetura, eu sou fixado na narrativa urbana, me marcou, mas evidentemente que eu estou sendo injusto com todo o resto do trabalho dele.
Em 1989, Will lança City People Notebook, um caderno de notas com suas impressões sobre a vida urbana.
Táxi! Hey!
My thinking is city-oriented. I'm a city boy, and I think that way. Just as my artwork reflects my life in the city, because my artwork always is in strong shadow and in perspective.
Good. Off. Em 1991, Will lança uma obra que demandou 2 anos de intenso trabalho.
The Heart of the Storm was my first truly autobiographical work. It didn't start out to be an autobiographical work. What I wanted to do initially was to do a story about the subtlety of prejudice, of bigotry. The more I got into it, rather, the more I realized that I had to utilize my own life experience. And about 1/3 of the way through the preliminary writing of the story, I realized this was autobiographical and I might as well stay with it.
Willie! Willie! Yes, I read Will's graphic novels. My favorite is still To the Heart of the Storm. Of course, tomorrow he could write something new, which will then become my new favorite.
O livro permitiu a Will tratar da saga dos imigrantes judeus através da experiência de seus pais.
For years, in the spirit, I was very comfortable because I was hiding behind the spirit's mask. I was not exposing myself in any way. With the writing of Heart of the Storm, which became an autobiographical book, I was standing out in the middle of the street naked. I revealed myself totally, and it was a very traumatic experience. As a matter of fact, it was like therapy. I had a very difficult time dealing with, for example, my parents, how to treat my parents. Sometimes I felt guilty about how I treated my mother. I felt a little unfair in how I treated my father.
Além de tratar do relacionamento com seus pais, o livro era centrado na experiência de Will com o preconceito e antissemitismo, que culminariam com sua convocação para o serviço militar durante a Segunda Guerra.
This is my brother, Julian. Actually, his name is Pete. We call him Pete because it used to be Julian. When we were little boys, I was 8 years old, he was about 4 years old. We moved into a very tough neighborhood in the Bronx. I came downstairs with him. My mother always insisted I take care of him, so we were holding hands. I came downstairs, and when we got out in the street, there were 4 kids, very bad-looking kids. Kids said, "Oh, you are the new Jews here." I said, "Yes, we are." He says, "And what's his name?" It's my brother's name. I said, "His name is Julian." And they laughed. He said, I said, "Julian, the Jew, he's a Jew." So I got angry and I hit him. They hit me back and they beat me up. There were 4 kids against me. And he was standing in the corner. He wasn't doing anything, but he was a little kid. Anyway, we are going upstairs. There's blood running down my nose and I have a blow on my cheek and my ear was beat. And I said to him, "Look, from now on, your name is Pete."
As novelas gráficas de Eisner continuam tendo um grande impacto no Brasil.
Eu fiquei muito feliz porque a partir de agora, e ele está em plena atividade, nós teremos ainda grandes obras. Cada uma é uma obra-prima. E uma obra-prima dele sempre é superada pela outra obra-prima. E, beleza, eu continuo fã.
E ele tinha, assim, um trabalho com os personagens, de envolvimento, que fazia a pessoa esquecer que estava lendo uma história em quadrinhos. Parecia que você entrou dentro de uma história, simplesmente. Não parecia cinema, quadrinho, não parecia nada. Era uma história que você entrou dentro, você fazia parte daquilo lá.
A aceitação das novelas gráficas como forma válida de expressão artística ainda é um difícil processo.
The United States has been behind many countries in the world in their acceptance of comics as a valid literary medium. I think that it's important for us to recognize that Will Eisner has been one of the leaders in helping people to realize that comics can be a powerful literary medium, telling stories of interest to adult readers, not superhero adventure stories meant for teenage boys. The general reading public in this country still, I think, doesn't understand completely the difference between comic books and graphic novels. I also think the fact that there are now museums having to do with comic art will help to educate the general public to the differences between the genres of cartoon art. My first impression when I met Will Eisner was of a person of incredible energy, who certainly could not be as old as his birth date would tell me he was. I believe that Will Eisner is looking forward, and I think that's one of the most exciting things about him. He recently gave a presentation here at Ohio State University in which he talked about the future of the graphic novel. And his excitement was contagious.
Em 1992, Invisible People reúne 3 histórias, onde Eisner aprofunda o tema da solidão e do anonimato nas grandes cidades.
Alô, 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 é do diário? Ligue-me com o obituário. Gostaria de retratar um erro. Eu não estou morto!
Actually, I like to say that my reader is a 50 or 60-year-old man who just had his wallet stolen in the subway. I'm talking about heartbreak, I'm talking about human experience, and so therefore I'm talking to adults.
Eu não estou morto!
São obras-primas, são crônicas de um tempo. Nos próximos anos, nos próximos séculos, o material, ou as novelas gráficas do Eisner estarão entre os clássicos da literatura.
Em 1995, Eisner retoma um elemento recorrente em suas histórias, Dropsy Avenue, o bairro. O livro conta a história dessa ficcional avenida de Nova York desde 1870 e seus períodos cíclicos de progresso e decadência. Por diferentes ondas de imigração, o preconceito e o sentimento comunitário duelam pelo controle do local.
Well, Dropsy Avenue represents not only the places that I lived, but the places that I saw. Now, as time went on, as I grew up, we moved throughout the city to other places. My parents always moved closer to the edge of the city, tried to get out of the heart of the city as much as possible. And toward the years when I was in high school, we lived on the outskirts of the Bronx. And this, to me, represents the highly dramatic area of the city, the place where people live close together and interact with each other. I have always been aware, and those people who live in major cities, big cities I'm talking about, are aware of the fact that the street you live on is a whole world.
Com Family Matter, Eisner troca as crônicas sobre o passado e enfoca o controverso tema do deterioramento dos laços familiares. Will coloca o dedo na ferida de um grave problema na sociedade moderna.
Tchau.
Chegou cedo.
Vou na casa da minha irmã.
Olha.
Ei! Desculpa. Vou ao aniversário de 90 anos do papai.
Ele vai te deixar algum dinheiro?
Por que você acha que eu tô indo?
Something's been happening, certainly in American society, and that is that the families are no longer extended the way they were years ago, where the grandparents live with the children until they die. The problem of living today is so frenetic. The question is what to do with a parent after the parent becomes what they regard as a problem.
Além do tema polêmico, Eisner inovou mais uma vez no design do livro.
His most recent graphic novel, Family Matter, he put a color tone in the background. It's subtle. I printed it as if it were a 4-color book because all of the colors are in that tone.
O Will pode lembrar alguma coisa tipo vinho que vai ficando melhor quanto mais velho vai ficando melhor, mas com uma quantidade, né, de vinho, tamanho de garrafa aí, que é inesgotável, não acaba.
Will Eisner's work has been translated into any number of languages throughout the world. And the reason for the popularity abroad is very simple. Will Eisner focuses upon the drama of the human condition. He talks about frustrations of life, he talks about love, he talks about romance, he talks about ambition, and those are universal. They apply everywhere.
Will Eisner é hoje um artista completo que produz sozinho todas as fases de seus livros. Mas será possível colaborar em uma novela gráfica?
The question of whether or not a graphic novel can be created by team, I think, is difficult. Clearly, it's easier if one person does it because that person has a clear vision of the story he or she would like to tell. If there's a sympathy, an understanding, a very deep communication between a team of people, certainly they can do a great job in creating a graphic novel.
Bill Sienkiewicz teve a rara oportunidade de colaborar com o mestre.
Will was originally asked by the packager of the biography of Jimi Hendrix to do the artwork. And Will said that he's locked into Glenn Miller's time, so he didn't feel that he was the right choice for the artist on the Hendrix book. I think it actually would have been a brilliant idea. And I guess Will suggested me, which was very generous of him. I had a bit of a reputation as a loose cannon, that I was going to paste things down on the artwork and staple it and do things multimedia with it. Will was brought in to help with storytelling suggestions, and he was actually the creative consultant. And Will had a lot of input in terms of ideas. Will, on that book, seeing somebody who is about Glenn Miller in terms of his own term, doing something about Hendrix would have been, talk about a really avant-garde move.
Além de suas clássicas histórias do antológico Spirit, Eisner criou toda uma obra durante seus anos maduros. Will é um patrimônio vivo do seu meio de expressão, mas trabalha com a energia e o entusiasmo de um garoto.
Having discussed all this and having given you some such profound opinions based on the fact that I've been around here a long time, I'm probably the oldest of the comic book artists now, since most of them are dying away. I feel pretty much like the 2,000-year-old cartoonist created by Mel Blanc. Remember that? I do have one very sad fact, that as I get an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award, I cry a little inside because I realize that I can no longer win the Promising Young Cartoonist Award.